Hi guys, Andy here, and welcome to Freetime event theatrical release. You might remember me playing another Freetime event many years ago that I think is my most popular video on this channel. So this one's Hinata and Nagito. Yeah. I still love Danganronpa. I haven't done much with it in a very long time. I kind of want to get back into it just because. But let's get started, shall we? Also, there's no music in here, so future Andy, remember to put in some music in the background. Komeita smiled like he hadn't just suggested something absurd. Would that be an acceptable way to spend an afternoon, Hinata-kun? That was the worst movie any of us have ever seen, and hopefully ever will see. We were only allowed to see it once. Why the hell do you want to go back there? Hinata didn't bother to mention that he had other bad associations with the theater, possibly because he had actually hoped Komeita had forgotten that he spent 1.5 million yen on a sticker there earlier. I'm sorry, I was born stupid. If Komeita had forgotten about it, there's a chance Monokuma had forgotten about it, and maybe someday Hinata could forget about it too. It just felt like going into the lobby was going to really reinforce the whole sticker debacle in everybody's memory. He realized as he stood there that he probably still had the stupid sticker in his shirt pocket, which was not great, as it was bright pink and his shirt a thin white. There was no way he was going to reach up to check in the middle of their conversation. Their conversation. His mind was wandering. Komeita was saying something. Shit. So obviously it would be tacky to reuse that plotline, and more importantly, boring. I'm certain that it's safe for that reason alone. Komeita flashed a smile that Hinata had attempted to return, hoping it carried the implication that he'd been listening. Okay. Hinata said, no longer equipped to argue a point that he'd missed half of. Okay. Let's go to the movies. And while we're going to the movies, I'm enjoying some nice tea that I just made. The huge ad for the Wizard of Minami still hung overhead. There seriously better be something else playing now. It's the theater, Hinata-kun. Komeita replied thoughtfully. I'm sure it has lots of movies that are not currently being used for murder. Oh, and just in case Monokuma doesn't want to let us in, I can whisper to him that I'm planning to kill you in there. I'm sure he'll play along if there's murder involved. I'd really rather you not tell him that. You're right, it's much more realistic if you tell him you're planning to kill me instead. Komeita dragged his thumb down in a slow slicing motion across his own throat. You're tricking me into seeing a movie with you. How sinister. Then once the movie starts playing and you've chosen the right moment, you can put your arm around my shoulders as if you're stretching. It'll be daring, and I'll pretend not to notice. Yeah? Hinata glanced over Komeita's shoulder, briefly fantasizing about making him run for the door before he had a chance to finish his terrible thought. And then when I've become engrossed in the plot, you can hold me in place and quickly slit my throat with this. Komeita whipped something out of his pocket and presented it in a single halting motion that made Hinata jump. His eyes darted over the little oblong object for a few defensive seconds before Komeita relaxed his posture minutely. I can't fucking read. It's a Muay Thai tool, he explained helpfully. So naturally it comes with a small knife. I always wanted one, but I don't trust myself with one. He slid his nail into the tiny crescent wedge carved into the steel and pried it out of the base, tilting his palm and letting it glimmer in the sun for effect. Hinata honestly wondered why he ever let Komeita out of his sight. I know what a multi-tool is. Put that away. The blade was really short and didn't seem to be all that sharp, but that wasn't the point. I was only joking. Of course, you wouldn't slit my throat. We already know that's a messy process. Komeita laughed to himself, apparently at the obviousness of it all. Though, as long as we're being messy, you could stab it into my heart for a mercifully quick death. Typical kind-hearted Hinata-kun. That's wrong. Hinata couldn't help himself. Komeita flinched away from the hand pointing at his nose and looked hurt. Hey, I happen to think you're very kind, even if you sometimes come across a little. No, the blade is way too short to kill you quickly with one stab to the heart. Hinata felt a bit breathless. Oh, wonderful. That's the spirit. You're even giving my heart a lot of credit. I knew you were kind. Can we please just go see if there's anything playing? Komeita folded the tool up safely and put it back into his pocket. I'm happy you're so eager. I'm getting kind of excited. And just a forewarning, there's a little bit of not safe for work stuff in here, so a little bit more than the last game I played with it. It certainly smelled like a theater, the scent of butter, mainly with a hint of popcorn. Not counting the atrocity from the other day, Hinata couldn't remember the last time he'd been to see a real movie in a theater. But the distinct scent always triggered familiar warm feelings in him, and right now, he kind of hated it. This wasn't the time to be relaxing or getting distracted, and that would be true as long as they remained on the island, but it was difficult to find any kind of escape here, and the prospect of a couple of hours of mindless entertainment was shamefully appealing. The doors to the screening room were unlocked, though the placard beside it had no indication of what was playing, or when. That probably didn't matter. It wasn't like Hinata actually expected this to work like a regular theater. Ultra Despair Servant? Is that what I'm seeing? He'd worry about all that later. There was something more pressing catching his eye at the moment. The one thing you could count on to be good even if the movie sucked. He headed straight for the concession stand, where, much like breakfast, an array of mysterious treats were laid out on the counter for the taking. The popcorn hadn't even absorbed the butter yet, glistening and looking freshly made, and extremely unhealthy. Ooh, I love movie popcorn. I normally don't eat like actual food. They're just usually a little bit of popcorn, a big gulp, of course, and sometimes if I have the extra money, some little candy, some little gummy bears. Sitting beside it was a paper tray with a similarly glistening hot dog, a box of packaged candy, and a large plastic soda cup with a straw. I guess we can take all this stuff. Now that I'm a little bit, not older. Now that the AMC close to me, they have these little drinks. This little vending machine. It's not a vending machine. You press a button and basically you can make your own drink. And I hate it because I can't drink anything from there because of my kidneys. So at best, I usually just go for a Sprite or ginger ale. That's it. Do you want the popcorn or the hot dog? Komeita had already wrapped both hands around the girthy soda cup and put it close for a quick sip. How lucky that they carried Dr. Hopper. Oh, I love Dr. Hopper. I feel like it's been a while since I've had any. Yeah, you like Dr. Hopper? Hinata asked absently, still eyeing the more tangible snacks. I like it a lot. They say it has 55 flavors packed into one beverage, though my palate isn't nearly refined enough to be able to discern them all. Of course, it's not healthy to drink something sugary all the time, but this is a special occasion. Also, I'm really self-conscious because I noticed in one of my videos, you can hear me just mouth breathing, and I hate it so much. But I never notice I'm doing it. Nothing beats a cold soda at the movies, and I should treat myself since I'm finally on a date. God, I would fucking love to go on a date. Hinata, who had begun impatiently extending his hand to the point at the hot dog, snapped his arm back to his side. A date, huh? So what if they had been fooling around at the pool? And in his cottage? And that one time at the beach? I forgot. I think there's a few more times of this. Whatever they did while Hinata was carefully watching Komeita for everyone's protection isn't dating. It was stress relief. I might actually revisit poolside event. Sorry, I shouldn't have said something so selfish out loud. Don't worry, Hinata-kun. It's not as though you have to like someone to take them on one date, right? It wasn't that Hinata didn't like him, or did like him. That wasn't relevant. That's... I'm actually really glad I get to have a date with you. Komeita shifted his weight a little, eyes darting to the side. Obviously, you wouldn't think of this as a date, but I'd like to ask your forgiveness if I think of it that way, so I can experience the kind of silly cliche once in my life. Hinata dropped the piece of popcorn he picked up right on the floor. Oh, did you... Did you actually mean that? He didn't manage to finish the sentence out loud, but Komeita seemed to hear it anyway. He sipped on his soda. The theater didn't seem like a particularly dangerous place to be with me. But maybe that's not what's troubling you. Komeita gave a wobbly, hard-to-read smile. You're right. The risk of association with me obviously isn't worth something so trivial. Please forgive me. Hinata didn't really understand, but the weight of Komeita's smile and the awkward tension that now hung in the air snapped his resolve immediately. He slapped the other boy's shoulder playfully and forced out a laugh. No, I get it. This is a date, right? Look. Hinata leaned into his face and took a long drag of Dr. Hopper from the cup in Komeita's hands. That was our indirect kiss. This date is off to a scandalous start. Stupid, I'm stupid. A different person might have been offended, but Komeita just laughed, respectfully neglecting to bring up all the times they directly kissed in the heat of some stress relief. Hinata-kun, you're entirely too kind to be in my miserable presence. At the very least, your regret will help you make better decisions in the future. Let's start the date. He added inflection, careful to show he was playing along. Turning back to the snacks, Hinata cleared his throat, slightly changing the tone of his voice for some reason, as if he were playing a character. So, popcorn or hot dog? We can share or whatever, just take one so I don't feel like I'm hogging it all. The change in tone lasted about half a sentence, as the character he was playing was apparently Hinata Hajime. Komeita put on no such airs. I don't really think we need to eat during the movie. It's distracting and can even be dangerous. Hinata scoffed. He was on a date with someone who had such bad opinions about movie food. He grabbed all the snacks off the counter. You don't have to eat them, but we should bring them inside in case we get hungry. I think Nagito's got a different kind of hunger. Komeita looked worried, but he and his huge soda followed Hinata into the screening room without another complaint. He parked out once they were inside, surrounded by the high ceiling and drapery. It would have been a pretty nice theater if not for the rude graffiti scattered over the walls. Hinata scanned the seats, suddenly faced with the overwhelming options of a completely empty theater. He just kind of stood in the back during that stupid Wizard of Minami experience, but now it seemed like a good time to get comfortable. Komeita was apparently considering it too. I like to sit at the front for the true full experience. Even right beside him, Komeita's quiet voice nearly got lost in the vastness of the acoustically tuned space, row upon row of upholstered chairs and soft velvety curtains absorbing a soft velvety sound. Good lord. I like to feel like I'm being swallowed by the story. That was certainly a choice of words. Though, since you're with me, maybe sitting by the exit is safer. Hinata shook his head. No way, the best seats are right in the center. Everyone knows that. My favorite spot in theaters is usually at the very top in the direct center below where they project the movie. Or directly in the center where it starts going upwards. But like close to where you enter from, really. I'm really choosy about it, but for the most part, I just enjoy being at the top. And I'm getting some tea from my throat. Wherever you want to sit is fine, of course. The front seats make your neck hurt anyway, and if there's a fire, it won't be that hard to escape if we're the only people here. Hinata ignored that comment and stiffly walked down the aisle, examining the rows. He stopped at the halfway point so abruptly that Komeita smacked into him. A few kernels of popcorn went flying, and the ice in the soda clattered noisily on impact. Hinata let out a surprised grunt that turned into clearing his throat. Right here, let's like the center. He turned to sidestep down the row he chose and picking a spot right down in the middle of the middlest row. He opened the plush seat with a creak and plopped down in it, balancing the hot dog precariously on the armrest one chair over and wedging the popcorn bag into the seat to his left. Komaeda stood next to him, hugging the enormous soda to his chest. He was making a face. I actually quite like this image. It's adorable. What's wrong? Hinata managed around a mouthful of popcorn. The floor is kind of sticky. It's a theater. The theaters I usually went to weren't that sticky. But I guess this is all part of the experience. His expression brightened considerably. I'm having fun. Komaeda finally sat down with a squeak. Okay. Hinata quietly absorbed that cheerful pronouncement as he crunched through some more buttery kernels. He'd almost forgotten the most important part of seeing a movie was supposed to be the part where a movie plays. He glanced back at the blank screen. So now what are we supposed to... The light suddenly dimmed and a horrendous blip of static crackled out of the large speakers, making them both flinch. No other sound followed, but the projector flickered to life in front of them, displaying a message. At this time, please select the genre of film you wish to consume. Using the Now That's What Someone Calls Movies, the cinema experience of a lifetime presents Third Island Theater Selection Collection version 2.3 app, available exclusively and automatically on your student handbooks. Voting will be tallied as soon as all requests are processed. For guests who stay through to the end of the film, there will be a special prize. Hinata could feel his blood pressure spike up, being prompted to actually do something instead of merely being subjected to it. Doing something is where things always seem to go badly. Nothing good had ever happened when they'd been promised a prize. Komaeda, however, was already reaching into his jacket pocket. There's seriously no way we're going to use some app Monokuma made. I'm on a date. I should try to enjoy it. Let's try to enjoy it. If something happens, I'm going to cry that we have to restart this. Hinata tried to swallow his worries. So that's fine, I guess. Komaeda was saying something earlier about how safe this was, right? That's probably what this was about. Komaeda with the student handbag out. I should vote too, huh? Is there a save button? There is a save. Okay. Of course, don't leave it all up to me. If we were to pick different movies and it's selected randomly, I definitely win, so we should agree on something first. Komaeda touched his handbook, and as promised, a new app had been installed on the home screen. It was represented by a cheesy clip art icon of a film strip and the words, "Now that's," was all that fit under it. He tapped out the screen and the menu opened. Read description of horror movie. A heart-pounding, spooktacular tale of terror. Does death lurk around every corner, or just the ones you happen to be walking past? It's pretty vague, but there's usually nothing that scary about horror movies, especially if it's unrealistic supernatural stuff, so this would be okay, most likely. A mystery. The crime of the century. Can it be figured out by anyone, ever? Plenty of mysteries to be solved around us already, but maybe this would sharpen our senses a bit and give us some ideas. I hope it's not a movie I've seen already, so I'll try not to spoil it for you. Spoiling mysteries is one of the worst things that anyone can do to another person. Action movie. Blam, wham, slam, cram, ma'am. Regarding explosions and danger, this is the only movie you'll ever need to see. Seems like this will be a loud movie, and the plot is probably not very interesting. I could tell you about some pretty action-oriented things I've been through myself, but if you just want special effects. Ooh, I'm so glad we saved, because I thought I could save for a second. I'm gonna pick... shit, I meant to save there. I guess since Danganronpa is such a mystery, let's watch the mystery movie, I guess. Hinata felt like he had been getting pretty good at solving mysteries lately. However, grim the circumstances, so maybe it would be a nice change of pace to have the outcome be irrelevant to his continued existence. Wonderful choice, I think. Objectively, this should be the most interesting pick. I'm really looking forward to watching the movie with you. Hinata felt a small swell of excitement jitter through his fingertips. I must really be looking forward to seeing a movie too, I guess. They both tapped the selection in their habits, nearly synchronized, and the lights dimmed even more, fading until only the rope lights lining the aisles could be seen in the darkness. The screen stayed black as a familiar sound faded in, the sound of the ocean. A few waves crashed in surround sound, the high-pitched scream of seagulls peppering the peaceful monotony, realistic and clear as if the birds were circling the theater. As if Hinata and Komeda were standing outside on their beach at this very moment. The expected imagery finally appeared on screen, footage of the peaceful sea at midday, slowly pulling back to reveal a sandy shore. Hinata's mind instantly went to his first day on the island, recalling the feeling that he could still be connected to his old life, through the vast sky and the ocean that was the same no matter what shore you were standing on. Even in this movie, the color of the water was the same. The color of the sand, the rocky outcrop in the distance, the position of the palm tree. The mono machine was the same. He heard Komeda let out a low, curious hum beside him. Okay. Hinata swallowed audibly. It seemed likely that Jabberwock had been used as a set in films before, and also plausible that a local theater would have such a film on hand, but... Hinata cast a glance to his right. Komeda's eyes were glittering with intrigue and wide enough that Hinata could see the ocean scene reflected in them. And then he saw his own face reflected there, and his full attention went back to the movie. The Hinata on screen was running toward the sea, innocent and relatively cheerful. Who was this person, about to join his classmates already playing in the water? Who would have expected that the cameras filming us all this time were actually film quality? Komeda commented breathlessly. Was this really from their first day on the island? Why the hell were these shots so good? The cameras from this angle was clearly following him. He would have noticed something like that, right? The scene panned to the faces of friends, several who were no longer with them, laughing, splashing. Simultaneously fresh in his memory as living, breathing people in cases in need of investigation. It was hard to watch, but if he recalled correctly, they were all about to be interrupted by Monokuma in this opening scene anyway. That scene didn't happen. Instead, it abruptly, awkwardly cut to inside the restaurant. It must have been after the first trial. Everyone was sullenly pushing pancakes and fruit around on their plate, not making much eye contact. Hinata was pretty sure he remembered this being the day after, but then another cut. To his own face. Someone has stolen my underwear. Who could have done this? A teary-eyed Hinata shouted, lingering on the scene long enough for him to process it being the old... Let me start that over again. A teary-eyed Hinata shouted, lingering on the scene long enough for him to process it being in the old building. What? Komeda slapped a hand over his mouth, far too late to hide the rasping laughter that burst out of him. It was actually shocking to see him laugh at something he seemed to find funny, and not whatever he was usually laughing about. I miss them. They were my only friend. What the hell is this? Hinata shouted, suddenly hyper-aware that he was probably providing another excellent reaction shot to some unseen camera. Hinata-kun, someone has stolen your treasured underwear. Komeda was already having way too much fun with this premise, and it was actually horribly cute to see him having what appeared to be a good time, even at Hinata's expense. Really, honestly horrible. Hinata felt the corners of his mouth start to turn up at the sight, which was fucked up and definitely not how he wanted to deal with the situation. He grunted his mirth away quickly. I'm glad this is funny to you, but aren't you the less bit worried about why this is about why this high quality footage is? I can't read apparently. I don't know how to read anymore. Why do y'all watch me? It was my Only one pair. Hey man, I think I found your underpants. Is it? Despair? No, not that. Pair. Oh my god. Hinata mashed his palms into his eyes. This is so stupid. It is a little troubling, Komeida agreed, sounding remarkably untroubled. No one wants that. Smelly stuff. We have to work together to solve the underwear. If only I, Tanaka Gundam, had use for human underworld, I would have taken it myself. But it was not I, Tanaka Gundam. Hasn't Tanaka-kun ever said the word underwear before? The dizzying cuts continued, weaving together an absolutely nonsensical setup for a mystery. It sort of hurt to watch for more than one reason. Hinata groaned, then lightly elbowed Komeida. I haven't seen much of you in this yet. Do you even show up on film? I simply lack presence. The human eye is obviously more drawn to people radiating with talent. Someone like me would never be presented prominently in a film, no matter how. Hinata-kun, you don't need to be ashamed. I've already seen much more than this. I might know the answer, but who needs the assistance of a worthless person like me? I'll tell you if you get down on your knees and lick my shoes. Well, there you are. Uh-huh. Can I borrow your underwear? Komeida, you have to take them off of me first, Hinata-kun, and then you can take anything from me that you want. I'll give you anything. Komeida's barely edited at all. This is bullshit. He'd grown used to the scenes cutting too rapidly to get his bearings, but this time he didn't change, and Hinata had to stop and process where it had landed. Oh. It was in his fucking bedroom at night. Cool. Great. Maybe it was his imagination, but it seemed like the lens had softened, giving the dim close-up of a heavy-lidded Komeida a dreamy haze. Oh no, he whispered. No, no. Komeida shifted in the seat and then took a decidedly long drag from his Dr. Hopper. Putting my face on such a large screen, this is honestly bots off his poison. The net shot could have conceivably been from the camera that Hinata always knew was in his bedroom, but forced himself not to think about. The angle is about right, high up and pointed directly at his bed, where Hinata and Komeida from probably a week ago sat facing each other. The footage was grainy and the colors more desaturated, now much more like what he imagined surveillance video to look like. The audio quality dropped a bit, a bit of a hiss in the background, but over the hiss he heard Komeida giggle on screen. And then he gracefully peeled his shirt off, arching his back as he slipped it off his arms and folded it loosely behind him. Hinata watched himself lean back into his pillow as Komeida crawled into his lap. What the fuck? Hinata didn't even realize he'd stood up at first until he felt Komeida gently tugging at his sleeve, pulling him back into his seat. That sick bastard really has been filming us. What did you think was going on with all those cameras, Hinata-kun? Komeida asked, his face awash with sincere concern for Hinata's reasoning skills. But is this some kind of sick joke? Yes, I suspect that's exactly what it is. Komeida was way too easygoing about this. The footage switched back to high definition, soft focus close-ups, and the audio quality as crisp as if their embarrassing makeout sounds had been re-recorded in a studio. Hinata covered his eyes with his hands, but his treacherous fingers remained parted just enough to see his tongue push its way into Komeida's mouth. And he didn't have enough hands to also cover his ears, so he heard a moan, echoing across the high ceiling. We have to stop this, right? Destroy the footage or burn down the theater, or both, just to be safe. What if someone walks in? I'm fairly certain that destroying property is still against the rules. Perhaps this is actually intended to be a motive. Is that the extent of your hope? Are you willing to kill to prevent others from seeing a video like this? Komeita's expression and tone were unusually flat, but his eyebrows raised enough to let Hinata know this wasn't a rhetorical question. No. Probably. It's just... On screen, Hinata's hands were working their way into Komeita's underwear as he rolled his hips encouragingly. Hinata was trying hard to remember what this was leading up to. It started like so many evenings had recently, and he couldn't be expected to remember every single time Komeita had invaded his personal space. On screen, Hinata squeezed on-screen Komeita's ass, eliciting a gasp from both Komeitas at once. God. Hinata had no memory of this. Well, not exactly like this. Maybe it was CG. Very convincing CG. Beside him, Komeita nodded at the screen, apparently reliving the moment. Hinata sank down in his seat and struck his hand in the popcorn beside him, rifling through it like he was looking for something. He returned a big handful to his face, crunching down on the buttery bit slowly enough to briefly drown out the moaning on screen. On-screen Komeita abruptly dropped into on-screen Hinata's lap, tugging the waistband of his boxers away from his hips, and dipping his head down to get a better look. Hinata nearly choked when he was suddenly exposed to the theater, a polite mass of shifting mosaic pixels that did little to protect his dignity. He swallowed the popcorn but coughed hard enough that Komeita began worriedly thumping on his back. I did tell you that popcorn was dangerous at the movies. Are you alright? I'm fine. Hinata reached for another handful of popcorn to show how fine he was, but thought better of it and leaned down instead to take a gulp at the Dr. Pepper in Komeita's lap. Komeita hummed, and Hinata noticed that the hand still on his back was now tracing wobbly circles between his shoulders. Hinata sat back in his seat abruptly, trapping Komeita's hand behind him instead of shrugging it off as he was fairly certain he'd intended. Oh look, Komeita said with the same casual interest as one might point out a bird landing in the windowsill. On-screen Komeita was now fully leaned into Hinata's lap, head bobbing rhythmically while his hair was gripped with way more enthusiasm than Hinata's recollection of the event could possibly reconcile. The camera panned slowly down Hinata's face, eyes shut tight, panting, before cutting to a much more revealing shot of Komeita, looking earnestly at the mosaic in his hand. I can't watch this. Hinata groaned, continuing to watch it. The continuity is terrible. You were clearly wearing the missing underwear referenced earlier, and have been seen clutching mine already as well, unless this is intended to be a flashback. Hinata just lit that helm. We can leave if you want. Komeita made no move to get up. It must be so disgusting to be reminded of all the time you've wasted with me, and in high definition, no less. It's really not about that. Hinata tried opening Monokuma's app again on his hand, but to see if there was like a pause feature or something, but all that appeared was a black screen reading, "Enjoy your movie." We can't just leave. If anything, Hinata would rather barricade the door. Sure, they'd be trapped inside, but that was better than the alternative. The idea that this would continue on a huge screen while God knows what is revealed to God knows who. Oh, do you want to know the mystery of who stole your underwear? I suspect that they're setting it up to be me. The filmmaker may see me as that type of character. He looked a little sullen. Hinata groaned and sat back, crossing his arms over his chest. Oh yeah, this scene can't go on that long, right? Wasn't there a mystery to be solved? But it continued. An agonizing detail. Hinata didn't even remember it lasting this long in real life. Maybe he should be proud of himself. Hinata swallowed and tried to break up the awkwardness that he felt like he was experiencing all on his own while Komeita casually sipped soda. Wasn't I supposed to be borrowing your underwear? Really taking the long road to get there, huh? I guess we shouldn't speed the film like this to have a cohesive plot, right? It was weird to hear Komeita making a reference to porn, like he was some kind of regular person who just sat and watched porn. Maybe, Hinata considered, he'd read a book on stereotypes of human pornography once. Hinata startled when he heard his own stifled whimpering spike echoing out of the speakers, prickling his skin and leaving him with a visceral sensation. It should have been purely humiliating, and definitely was, but Wrapped in that shame was a part of him that didn't want to miss this opportunity to watch himself get off on the third person. On screen, Hinata's toes curled into the mattress on either side of Komeita's sides, and one of his knees bent sharply and suddenly as his grip on Komeita's hair tightened into a fist. Must be a good one, he thought, as if Komeita had ever done a less than stellar job. He suddenly felt Komeita's fingertips on his thigh, a light touch at first, hesitantly applying more pressure until his hand rested fully and intentionally on his leg. Well, it's not like it can get any worse than what's already on film. There is probably a version of this scenario where they both pretended like either of them had any self-control or remaining dignity, and Hinata wasn't in the mood to pretend that this was it. Let me get some more tea for my voice. I may actually have to censor what's about to come. No pun intended. Despite the camera pointed right at them, and the extremely unsettling implication that there was somehow more he couldn't see, they were clearly already caught on camera. It wasn't like it could get any worse. Sighing as if it was to convince himself this was some kind of chore he was resigned to, Hinata unfastened his belt buckle, sliding his zipper down until a triangle of blue and white boxers bulged out of the space. Humming softly next to him, Komeita leaned against his shoulder while they both stopped to admire Hinata's blatant interest in the mystery movie. I guess this is a good choice of film, after all. His long fingers crept into the slit of Hinata's underwear, skipping preamble altogether and going right for skin-on-skin contact. But the relief Hinata expected was drowned out by a different sensation. Cold. He snapped, hips jerking at the frigid, strangely clammy feeling of Komeita's hand on him. Komeita whipped his hand away so fast it blurred. Sorry. He hurriedly wiped his hand on his pants, bumping against a dewy, dripping cup of Dr. Hopper he'd been cradling moments ago. Komeita's hands were usually cold, but that had been less than pleasant. Ooh. We get a choice. Let's grab his wrist. He grabbed his thin wrist and pulled his hand back down, wrapping his fingers over top of Komeita's and pressing his hand firmly against the bulge in his boxers. Komeita let out a shocked, wheezy laugh. Something funny? Not funny. He laughed again, a crumbling sound. Komeita watched wide-eyed in the darkness as Hinata lifted his hips, grinding his member through the fabric against Komeita's palm. See? You're warming right up. Oh, I guess. Komeita choked mid-sentence, swallowing his words instead, and just nodded urgently against Hinata's shoulder. Right, of course. Now that Komeita's hand was a much more tolerable temperature, Hinata pulled himself through the opening of his underwear to press Komeita against his bare skin again. He knows now that all of Komeita felt warmer. His cheek on Hinata's shoulder, his hand on his thigh. Komeita seemed completely entranced by Hinata's grip on him, and even part of Hinata hadn't expected that he'd still be holding on this tightly. He dragged Komeita's palm across the head of his member, leaving a damp trail behind. Komeita had the fucking wet palms first, didn't he? Komeita glanced up at the film. On-screen Hinata was melting into the bed, as on-screen Komeita had taken a break to stop and have a rather one-sided conversation, lazily jerking him off while he excitedly described something he'd seen at the beach instead. Something about a squid. This was apparently the second time Hinata was hearing this, and for the second time he did not process a single word of it. Not wanting the Komeita to... Oh yeah, we're definitely censoring this. Not wanting Komeita beside him to get distracted as well, he curled his middle finger, sliding his nail against the back of Komeita's hand, drawing both of their attention back to the present. Hinata wrapped Komeita's fingers around himself, lightly squeezing around his fist, getting an indecent little moan out of him, as though Komeita was the one being touched. He started to move both their hands together, and it felt kind of like jerking off, but Komeita fluttered his fingers just a little, the way he always did. Hinata had never quite gotten the hang of it, but he heard himself make a low sound in his throat at the feeling of it. He squeezed Komeita's hand tighter and started moving faster, dragging his slender fingers hard over sensitive skin. He felt Komeita's wrist jerk of his own accord, and the unexpected sensation only made his grip on Komeita's hand tighter. Komeita licked his lips and exhaled softly, looking like he had something to say. Hinata braced himself. Hinata-kun? It was almost a whimper, a good start. It must be so much better when you do it to yourself, right? That distinctly wasn't true, but Hinata got the feeling he wasn't actually supposed to answer. I know you do it a lot, so I feel like I'll never actually reach your level. Your level is fine. Sure. You seem plenty... Don't say experience. Seasoned? Yourself? Seasoned? Komeita sucked in the breath between his teeth, letting the word pass across his own tongue to see if it tasted like a compliment. Interesting. Perhaps that's better than being bland, even if it's not your favorite spice. Hinata was too keyed up to deal with continuing their metaphor. Oh, we're back to this. Hinata ran his free hand through his hair until it stopped to tighten into a fist. He started thrusting his hips up into Komeita's grip, the seat squeaking under him with the motion. On-screen, Komeita had finished speaking and returned his mouth to its previous task. On-screen, Hinata practically squeaked on the last syllable of Komeita's name as he came, rendering the last of his sounds incoherent. The camera pulled back again, granting a more complete picture of the moment. Hinata arched off the bed while Komeita diligently sucked the life out of him until all the tension was gone from his limbs, and he settled back into the pillows with a sigh. On-screen, Komeita tipped his head and wiped his mouth. No, licked his fingers and sat back, apparently to admire his work. Hinata felt a pang of jealousy at how thoroughly spent on-screen Hinata looked, and found himself wanting to contort into positions that just didn't quite work with the rigidity of a theater sitting to get himself there as well. That's a mouthful to read. Before he knew it, he'd hiked one leg up on the back of the seat in front of him, angling his body more toward Komeita. Come on, more, he whispered, apparently close enough that he could enjoy a few moments where he didn't really care what came out of his mouth or how hard he was squeezing Komeita's fist around his... or how fast he was jerking the other boy's wrists. His other hand decided that burying itself in Komeita's hair was better use of its time and yanked his head into something that wasn't so much a kiss as it was Hinata groaning into Komeita's mouth and biting at his lower lip until he felt the first spasm of orgasm coursing through his spine. Komeita started when he realized it was happening, as if he was afraid he was going to miss something, and his attention fell on their hands together. The other boy managed the strength to still their movements, slowly twisting his grip as it settled low against Hinata's hips, so he could dip his head down to gently lap at the head. Just a few quick flicks of his tongue and Hinata was done, hips jerking hard enough that it splashed across Komeita's face. A perfect slash dripping from his cheek down to his throat. This should be fine. Hinata started to apologize, but Komeita was definitely the one responsible for the state he put himself in, and probably didn't want to hear it. Hinata melted back into the seat, head tipped back so he could try to settle his breathing. After a few moments, he silently pulled a napkin from beside the box of candy and turned back to wipe the mess from a dazed Komeita's cheek. He leaned into Hinata's touch, nuzzling against the now dirty napkin. Hinata swallowed a lump in his throat and allowed himself a glance into Komeita's eyes, clouded with need, and traced the napkin down over his lips and throat, cleaning feeling like a secondary concern. He'd barely finished when Komeita pushed past his hand and kissed him again, the mood once again overtaking his usual pretense at hesitation and pulling him into Hinata's lap, thighs spread and knees digging into the seat on either side of Hinata's legs. Hinata didn't want to look away from the hungry boy currently grinding on his hips, but he did briefly allow his focus to fall over Komeita's shoulder just to see what on-screen Hinata's next move was going to be. The camera lingered on a long shot centered on the bed. Hinata lay motionless with one arm thrown over his eyes, lips parted, breathing even, and was he sleeping? The scene started to fade out as on-screen Komeita scooted away from him to give him space, watching him fondly before closing his eyes as well. He felt Komaeda lean in to start sucking on his throat. Oh no. Hinata only thought he was ashamed earlier. That was nothing. Oh no, did I seriously not? It didn't look like it was edited. Hinata had been lying in the same position as he'd collapsed. Wow. Komaeda pulled away to look at him, deep concern falling over his flushed features. Hinata-kun? That night, did I really just fall asleep after that? I didn't, do anything else? Komaeda at least deserved Hinata's attempts at reciprocation of whatever all this was. Komaeda glanced over his shoulder, noticing the scene had moved on. Returning to extremely poorly edited footage, he took a moment to process what Hinata was going on about. He guessed when it settled on him, whipping his attention back to Hinata. You were extremely tired that day. You mentioned it several times that evening, but I still insisted on coming to your room. He put his arms around Hinata's neck, voice ghosting across his ear. I hope you can forgive me. What? Hinata couldn't even bring himself to acknowledge an apology that he definitely did not deserve. I'm an asshole, I guess. Hinata-kun. Hinata grabbed Komaeda's hips and jerked him forward, disrupting his balance enough that he had to grab the seat back. Tell me what you want me to do. Hinata-kun? Maybe that was a dangerous way of phrasing it. Tell me what you want me to do to make you feel good. I've heard that many times. He knew Komaeda's aversion to being direct about wanting anything, but he really, really wanted to hear him say it. As always, you don't owe me. I want you to tell me. Hinata's throat immediately went dry even as he said it. He waited, not sure what he was expecting or what he had hoped for. Komaeda's expression changed minutely, his posture straightened just a bit. Suddenly, he was looking down at Hinata. Of course, I've always wanted to feel Hinata-kun inside me. His nervous hesitation was gone, replaced by a matter-of-fact tone, as if Hinata should have come to this conclusion himself long ago. And I realized I'm a fool because I have headphones on and I don't need headphones on. Because there's no sound in this game. Oh my goodness. Not that it matters what I want, but it would probably feel good for you too if you could forget for a moment how repulsive I am. Though you've been pretty good at forgetting that recently, which is both admirable and kind. He licked his lips and Hinata noticed that he missed a spot earlier. Fuck. Hinata swallowed audibly. We should probably... Komaeda grabbed his hand and pulled it up to his lips, tongue flicking across Hinata's fingertips. Of course, I would never actually ask for something so intimate, particularly in a place like this. He shivered as his posture shifted again, unable to maintain whatever airs he was putting on. But there are other parts of Hinata-kun that I've thought about being inside me. If you still want to touch me at all. That is, after hearing me say all these disgusting things. Hinata wasn't sure which of them was responsible for two of those fingers sliding into Komaeda's mouth at that moment, pushing in all the way, letting him feel the low vibration of sound at the back of his throat while Komaeda shrugged his jacket down to his elbows. The next thing he knew, Komaeda's belt buckle was clinking against the armrest and being draped over the back of his seat, followed shortly by his parka. He was still balancing on Hinata's chair and seemed adverse to putting his feet back on the sticky floor, so Hinata helped him pull his jeans down just enough in a kneeling position. As Hinata carefully started putting his gray boxers down his hips, Komaeda suddenly leaned against him, pressing Hinata's face against his stomach and obscuring the view. Jesus Christ, I'm definitely going to have to censor this. Not that it's bad, I've seen way worse. Komaeda, Hinata turned his head toward enough to ask, and felt Komaeda wrapping his arms around his head. He couldn't see shit from this position except the blur of pale and the white of his t-shirt, face first in the scent of his skin and the detergent that lingered in the fine cotton of what may have been deceptively expensive piece of clothing. Komaeda buried his face in the top of Hinata's head and groaned in a tone that Hinata recognized so clearly that he had to stifle a laugh. Komeita didn't get embarrassed exactly, as he seemed to be a creature that was beyond shame in a way that frequently left Hinata speechless. But maybe the abruptness of requesting something he probably deemed one-sided and selfish had settled on him. "It's fine." Hinata mumbled into his t-shirt. "I don't really mind." Hinata didn't exactly feel like he was equipped to make this an incredible experience, but even if he wasn't technically prepared, there was a chance that his frequent and intense mental conjurings of this exact scenario might help. And since Komeita had asked, it wasn't really his fault if it was bad anyway. He kept repeating this sentiment in his head over and over, looking at his already wet fingers again for good measure before reaching behind Komeita, palms settling on his ass. Komeita's hits were bony, but there was enough for Hinata to squeeze, making Komeita jerk, sharp ribs jutting against Hinata's cheek. Hinata's fingers pressed against Komeita while his other hand held him in place, but as soon as he made contact, he froze. He couldn't possibly just go for it, right? Didn't he need to? "You don't actually have to do it," Komeita said, muffled against his chair as some of his tension released. He even started to pull away, but Hinata held him in place. "That's not it. I'm just not sure if, you're ready?" Komeita laughed, shaking both of them. "I'm always ready, of course." His voice cracked a little, not uncommon for Komeita, but seemed telling in context. "Anything you want to do to me, I've been ready." His arms around Hinata squeezed hard enough that it hurt for a moment. "So please." Hinata didn't feel all that reassured. "Do you mean like emotionally?" Because that's not exactly what I was about. "Oh, and I touched myself like this earlier. I touched myself like this earlier this morning." "Oh. Don't worry, it was after I left your cottage. In my own room." That wasn't exactly what Hinata had been worried about. "So does this mean you already... Don't be ridiculous." Hinata was not being ridiculous. Komeita leaned into Hinata again, and the conversation seemed to be done. It wasn't news to Hinata that Komeita touched himself like this. He'd even been present for it on a couple of occasions. But knowing that he was about to feel it firsthand sent a shiver down his spine. He'd managed to tune out the stupid movie playing behind them, trying to forget that the characters on screen had such an incredible view of Komeita right now. Once again, he was slightly jealous of on-screen Hinata. And they were likely being filmed from infinite angles at this exact moment. His saliva-slicked middle finger started to slowly massage his sensitive entrance. No, we're gonna little hasten this. I'm not gonna keep reading this. Yeah. More finger. Slip the tip of his finger into him. Oh, we are definitely censoring this a little bit. Yeah, there's words in here. Hinata slid his finger out again and went back to teasing until Komeita's hips rocked against him. Hinata held him tighter and pushed his finger in again, all the way to the knuckle before he stopped. He could feel Komeita's pulse and momentarily took his breath away. Without a frame of reference, it was hard to gauge how much it helped, but Hinata was still grateful for Komeita's morning habits, and tried not to think about how often the other boy had potentially come prepared for this scenario. I'm not moaning. But yeah. More moaning. Trembling. Hinata-kun. Komeita's voice hitched. Sorry. It's probably not as good as when you do it to yourself, right? Oh no, I didn't expect it to be anything like when I do it to myself. It's much more intense since it's you. Yeah, we're gonna keep I'm gonna keep reading this. You can enjoy my censored face over this. Hinata slid Komeita's t-shirt up higher so he could nip at his chest intermittently, while Komeita jerked an arch and clawed his way through, hoping the added stimulation would make up for whatever he definitely lacked in experience. Every time Komeda's hips rocked up against him, he could feel the hard warmth against his chest and the dampness of something starting to leak through his shirt. God, okay. He was probably doing something right. Hinata tried splitting his fingers as he pulled them out, testing the taut skin and wondering if Komeda could take more. If he should be doing more. Oh my god, just throw your fucking fist in there now. What's happening now? Oh, we are definitely censoring some stuff. Without hesitation, he pushed his own middle finger in, wedging tightly into himself alongside Hinata's fingers. Oh, okay, so that we're... Jesus Christ. I mean, not bad. It's making me laugh, basically. Komeda muffled his cry into Hinata's hair when he finally came, splashing across Hinata's shirt and tying sinking against him, panting and instantly relaxed enough that Hinata's fingers slipped out easily. Okay. I ruined your shirt and tie, Komeda whispered, voice heavy with that familiar combination of just came and deep self-loathing. God, do I know that all too well. Oh. Let's see. It took Hinata a few moments to realize the credits were rolling, and an extremely quick scroll of the names of everyone's on the island went by, and then a long drawn-out scroll of as Monokuma's name went by many times. He credited himself for things like gliding and catering and best boy grip, a title which Hinata was skeptical of. Why, I guess we missed the mystery rill. Hinata tosses dirty napkin on the floor. Please do not throw your dirty napkins on the floor in the movie theaters. The reality is that you do have your underwear. I've seen it and would testify as to its location if asked. I don't feel like that was feature length, but that's probably for the best. It was free. At least it wasn't Wizard of Minami. Shit, you right? It's not okay to go outside like that, is it? Do you want to wear my jacket? I'm not actually sure that's less suspicious. Hinata was also mildly concerned that the sleeves might belong on him. Here, I have an idea. Hinata turned to touch the untouched hot dog, still balancing on the armrest, and stuck his finger into the messy drizzle of ketchup. Komeda watched in horror, frozen in place as Hinata traced over the stains of ketchup. Hinata-kun, he hissed, semi-hysterical, hands trembling at his sides. What have you done? That's a normal stain to get at the movies. I'm sure there's bleach at Rocket Punch. It's fine. They made their way down the aisle. I hope no one thinks I got hurt because of the ketchup. Hinata laughed. That looks nothing like a bloodstain at all, so I'm sure it's fine. They pushed open the heavy double doors. Hoop boop boop. Hinata jumped, hating that Monokuma got the drop on him when he should have probably been expecting this. Did you have fun solving the mystery? I was hoping you would pick this one. I hate you so fucking much, Monokuma. Haven't you noticed? All this time I've been trying to get you all saying certain phrases on camera. It was all for the sake of completing my masterpiece. All of this has been to land myself a spot in the filmmaking history. Huh? Well, that's a lie. This wasn't planned out that carefully. How was I supposed to know you'd come back to this old location seeking entertainment when there's an entire new island explored that is the very picture of entertainment itself? It was certainly mysterious in a lot of invasive and terrifying ways. Anyway, I couldn't have possibly edited this all by myself, so I programmed a bot to help me. There are bots for everything these days. Aren't you just a bot yourself? Did someone program you? This is just a side story, so I really don't think anyone appreciates your lame speculations. Shit, you right? Of course I programmed a bot. There are, what, 15 of you? 16. Right, how can I be expected to make a unique movie for every person who comes in here by myself? This was a customized video experience using facial recognition. Oh, I'm getting shivers just thinking about how far technology has come. Customize? You don't think other customers want to watch some video starring just you? Imagine being that self-centered. Komaeda shrugged at Monokuma and shook his head. Don't side with him. So are you ready to tell me the answer to the mystery? If you're paying attention to the clues, I'm sure you figured it out. Ask Komaeda. Judging by the clues, it was definitely Hinata-kun who stole his own underwear. Wonderful, that sounds like a brilliant twist, though maybe a bit obvious since the title of the file was Hinata Hajime Underwear MP4. That's probably because it was my underwear that was missing in the first place, so... Wow, I really don't care. I already know the plot twist now. There's no reason to watch it or discuss it further. And it's taking up valuable hard drive space. Whatever, let's just get out of here. Hinata grabbed Komaeda's hand, surprising both of them, and pulled him out of the theater. Wait, weren't we going to get a prize? Ugh. Hinata had been in such a hurry, he left without thinking about the stupid prize. We can't really go back and tell Monokuma we won his prize. You're right, I guess we could go back and see another movie sometime. Yeah, let's go back to the title screen. Because I am done with this. Jesus Christ, this took like an hour to go through. Yeah, this is Freetime event, theatrical release. I'm just gonna leave it at this. I might edit it a bit just to get to the more scandalous parts of it. I probably won't because I'm really fucking lazy. But I will be putting my face over certain scenes. And I should probably drink some more tea because I'm losing my voice now. But yeah, that was something. I really liked this one. This was funny. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. I have a few more things coming out this week. Probably some more Dead by Daylight with the gang that gets hooked. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.